Just one.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you know that someone made that two pictures showing a man who was stuck in an isolated island on the ocean, and there was only one coconut tree. So in the first picture, he chopped down the tree and used the branches to spell a capital letter help, so that people can see it and help him, right? And on the second picture, he chopped down the tree and turned it into a boat, so that he can also save himself.
Okay.
And it's kind of educational, right? You have to do something to save yourself instead of just waiting there. And guess what? Some people comment below the picture. They said, looking for that is more exciting than waiting for that.
I thought you were gonna say it was a mistake to cut down the tree because you couldn't eat the coconuts. And then drink the coconut water while you're waiting for someone to rescue you. All right. Thank you for those of you who returned. We are on page 692.
Mama,
Yes.
Coco's with me, by the way.
Hi, okay. Hi, do some reading for me. Chapter 34 of the instructions received for the disenchantments of the peerless Dulcinea del Toboso, which is one of the most famous adventures in this book.
What pages? Mama, page is that? 692?
Yes.
Okay. The instructions received from the disenchantment of the peerless Dulcinea del Toboso, which is one of the most famous adventures in this book. Great was the pleasure the Duke and Duchess received from their conversation with Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, and being resolved in their intention of playing some tricks on them, which should bear some appearance or semblance of adventures, they took an idea from Don Quixote's account of the Cave of Montesinos, and from it prepared a famous one. What most astonished the Duchess, however, was the greatness of Sancho's simplicity, for he had now come to believe that Dulcinea's enchantment was the infallible truth, although he had himself been the enchanter and the trickster in that business. So, having given their servants directions as to their behavior, some 6 days later they took Don Quixote on a hunting party with an array of huntsmen and beaters worthy of a crowned king. They gave him a hunting suit and Sancho another of the finest green cloth, but Don Quixote refused to put his on, with the excuse that he had to return next day to the arms and not carry wardrobes or stores with him. Sancho, however, took what they gave him with the intention of selling it at the first possible opportunity. Then, when the appointed day came, Don Quixote put on his armor and Sancho his new suit, and the squire riding on Dapple, whom he would not leave behind even though they offered him a horse, joined the troop of beaters. The Duchess came out magnificently dressed, and Don Quixote, out of pure courtesy and good manners, took the rein of her palfrey, although the Duke tried to prevent him. After some time they reached a wood lying between two very high hills, where they took up their positions, laid their ambushes, arranged their beats, and distributed the huntsmen to various stations. Then the hunt began with...
Does everyone understand how the hunt works?
No.
Do you know what the beaters are? They literally beat the bushes to make the animals come out so that they can chase them and hunt them and kill them. So they're trying to find. It's no fun if there's no animals to hunt. So that's why the dogs go ahead and bark and all that. They try to get the birds out of so that they can shoot them or get the animals to run away, because you're beating the bushes, so they're so scared. They're hiding, but they're more afraid of the beaters than they are of running, trying to run for it. It's more exciting to go looking for death than to wait for it. Okay, continue.
Then the hunt began with such a great noise of shouting and hallooing that, what with the barking of the dogs and the sound of the horns, they could not hear one another speak. The Duchess dismounted and took up her station with a sharp spear in her hands in an ambush where she knew the wild boar generally passed. The Duke and Don Quixote also dismounted and placed themselves on either side of her, while Sancho assumed a position at the extreme rear, without getting off of his Dapple, whom he dared not abandon for fear that some accident might befall the beast. But scarcely had they alighted and put themselves in a line with a great number of their servants when they saw a huge wild boar rushing towards them, hard pressed by the hounds and pursued by the huntsmen, gnashing its teeth and tusks and spraying foam from its mouth, at which sight Don Quixote braced his shield and advanced to encounter it, sword in hand. The Duke also advanced with a spear, but the Duchess would have been ahead of them all if her husband had not prevented her. Only Sancho, at the sight of the valiant beast, abandoned Dapple and started running as fast as he could. He tried to climb a tall oak, but could not, for when he was halfway up, as his ill luck would have it, a bow A bough which he had grasped in his endeavor to get to the top broke, and falling to the ground, left him in the air, caught on a fork of the oak and unable to get down. Finding himself in this plight with his green suit tearing, and thinking that if the fierce beast were to come that way it would be able to reach him, he began to shout so loud and persistently for help that anyone who heard him did not see him, suppose that some wild animal was devouring him. At last the task was run through by the many javelin points which the hunters leveled against him, and Don Quixote, turning his head at the shouts which he had already recognized for Sancho's, saw him hanging head down from the oak, and beside him Dapple, who did not abandon him in his calamity, and Cide Hamete says that he seldom saw Sancho without seeing Dapple, or Dapple without seeing Sancho. Such was the friendship and loyalty between them. Don Quixote went up and released Sancho, who, once free and on the ground, looked to the tear in his hunting suit and grieved in his soul, for he thought that in that suit he possessed an inheritance. Meanwhile, they laid the mighty boar on a baggage mule, and covering it with sprigs of rosemary and branches of myrtle, bore it away as the spoils of victory to some large field tents, which were pitched to the middle of the wood. They were found the tables set and dinner prepared, a grand and sumptuous spread, which clearly displayed the greatness and magnificence of the host. And as Sancho showed the Duchess the rents in his torn coat, he observed, "If this had been a hunting of the hare or small birds, my coat would have been in no danger of getting into this state. I don't know what pleasure is to be got from lying in wait for an animal who can kill you, if he catches you on his tusk. I remember hearing an old ballad once which says, 'By the bears you may eat,' as was Favilla the Great." "That was a Gothic king," said Don Quixote, "who went out hunting and was eaten by a bear." "What I mean," replied Sancho, "is that I wouldn't have had princes and kings putting themselves in such like perils for the sake of a pleasure that should really not be a pleasure, for it consists in killing an animal which has not committed any offense." "But you are quite mistaken," answered the Duke, "for the exercise of hunting is the most essential of all sports for kings and princes. Hunting is war on a small scale. In it there are strange stratagems, artifices, and ambushes for the safe conquest of the enemy. In hunting one suffers extremes of cold and intolerable heats. Idleness and sleep are cut short. The bodily strength is increased. The hunter's limbs are made nimble. In short, it is an exercise which can be followed without prejudice to anyone, and with pleasure to many. And the best thing about it is that it is not for everyone, as other kinds of sport are, except for hawking, which is also reserved for kings and great lords. So, Sancho, you must change your mind, and when you are a governor, follow the chase. You will see that you will be 100 times the better for it." "No, indeed," answered Sancho. "A good governor and a broken leg are best at home. It would be a fine thing if people came wearied out to look for him on some business, and he was amusing himself in the forest. The government would go to the devil at that rate. Indeed, sir, hunting and pastimes are better suited to idlers than to governors. The way I mean to take my pleasure is in a game of cards at Easter, and skittles on Sundays and holidays, for these huntings and the like don't go with my temper or my conscience." "Pray God, Sancho, that you prove as good as your word," said the Duke, "though there's a gap indeed, twixt word and deed." "Be that as it may," replied Sancho, "a good paymaster doesn't worry about sureties, and God's help's better than early rising, and belly carries legs, and not legs belly. I mean that if God helps me, and I do my duty with a good heart, there's no doubt that I shall govern better than a goshawk. So let them put a finger in my mouth, and see if I bite or not." "God and all his saints confound you, Sancho, you wretch," cried Don Quixote. "When will the day come, as I have often asked before, when I shall hear you utter a continuous and connected sentence without proverbs? Let this fool be your highness, for he will grind your souls, not only between two, but between 2,000 proverbs, dragged in as fittingly and as much to the point as, God bless him and me too, if I have patience to listen to them." "There may be more of Sancho Panza's proverbs," said the Duchess, "than the Greek commanders, yet they are no less valuable for the pithiness of their expression. I can say for myself that they give me more pleasure than others that are better applied and more seasonably introduced." With this and similar entertaining talk, they left the tent for the wood and passed the day visiting the hunters' posts and ambushes. Here they were overtaken by night, which was neither so clear nor so calm as the usual at the season of the year, it being about midsummer, but a certain half-light that obtained was of great assistance to the plans of the Duke and Duchess, for as soon as it was dusk and night was beginning to fall, it suddenly appeared as if the whole wood in all directions was burning, and presently they heard from here, there, and everywhere countless trumpets and other martial instruments, as if several troops of cavalry were passing through the forest. The light of the fires and the sound of the warlike instruments almost blinded the eyes and deafened the ears of the spectators and of everyone in the wood as well. Presently, they heard a great shouting of Lay Lily, which is a Moor's battle cry. Trumpets and clarions blared, kettle drums rattled, pipes shrilled, almost all together and so continuously and rapidly that anyone with any senses at all must have lost them at the confused din of all those instruments. The Duke was struck dumb, the Duchess astonished, Don Quixote amazed, and Sancho trembling. In fact, even those who were in the secret were seized with alarm. Fear held them silent when a postilion dressed as a demon passed in front of them, blowing instead of a bugle a huge hollow ox horn, which emitted a hoarse and fearful sound. "Hi there, brother courier," cried the Duke. "Who are you? Where do you come from? And what men of war are these who appear to be passing through this wood?" To which the courier replied in bold and horrific tones, "I'm the devil. I have come to seek Don Quixote de la Mancha. The people approaching are 6 troops of enchanters, bearing the peerless Dulcinea del Toboso on a triumphal car. Here she comes enchanted with the gay Frenchman Montesinos, to give Don Quixote instructions on how the lady is to be disenchanted. If you were the devil, as you say you are, and as your appearance suggests, you would have recognized the said knight Don Quixote de la Mancha, for you have him before you." "By God and my conscience," answered the devil, "I was not looking at him, for my mind is distracted by so many matters that I was forgetting the principal purpose I had come for." "This devil must certainly be an honest fellow," said Sancho, "and a good Christian. For if he weren't, he wouldn't swear by God and his conscience, so I suppose that there must be some good people even in hell." Then the demon, without dismounting, directed his gaze on Don Quixote and said, "To you, Knight of the Lions, and may I see you between their claws. I am sent by the unhappy valiant knight Montesinos, who commanded me to bid you on his behalf await him on the spot where I should meet you, since he brings with him her whom they call Dulcinea del Toboso, for the purpose of giving you instructions as to her disenchantment, and as my coming here was for no other reason, I need stay no longer. May demons like myself have you in their keeping, and the good angels preserve this noble pair." Then, when he had spoken, he blew his enormous horn, turned his back, and departed without waiting for a reply. This produced further amazement in everyone, especially in Sancho and Don Quixote. In Sancho, at their insistence in defiance of the truth that Dulcinea was enchanted, and in Don Quixote, since he could not be certain whether what had happened in Montesinos' cave was true or not. But while he was deep in these thoughts, the Duke asked, "Does your worship intend to wait, Don Quixote?" "Why not?" answered he. "I shall stay here, fearless and strong, though all hell should come to assail me. But if I see another devil and hear another horn like the last one, I'll no more stay here than I'd stay in Flanders," said Sancho. By this time the night had grown darker, and numerous lights began to flit about the wood, much as the dry exhalations of the earth flit about the sky and appear to our vision as shooting stars. At the same time a frightful noise was heard, like the rumbling of the ponderous wheels of ox wagons, from whose harsh and continuous creaking wolves and bears, if there are any around, are said to fly. The turmoil, however, continued to increase, and it actually sounded as if 4 separate skirmishes or battles were being fought in the 4 quarters of the wood. Close by there pealed the harsh thunder of dreadful artillery. Further off countless musket shots rang out. Almost at hand resounded the shouts of the combatants. Afar off the Muslim war cries were repeated. In fact, the cornets, horns, bugles, clarions, trumpets, drums, cannons, and guns, and above them all the fearful creakings of the wagons, made together so confused and horrible a din that Don Quixote had to avail himself of all his courage to endure it. But Sancho's heart fell into his boots and sent him fainting to the skirts of the Duchess, who received him and promptly ordered water to be thrown in his face. This was done, and he returned to his senses just as the wagon with the creaking wheels came up to where they stood. It was drawn by 4 ponderous oxen, all swathed in black trappings, with a flaming wax torch tied to each horn. On top of the wagon was placed a high seat, on which was seated a venerable old man, dressed in a long robe of black glazed buckram, with a beard whiter than snow, and so long that it fell below his waist.
Oh.
For the wagon was full of lights. What? For the
What?
wagon was full of
Go ahead.
For the wagon was full of lights, and it was easy to distinguish everything in it. It was driven by 2 ugly demons dressed in the same buckram, with such hideous faces that when Sancho had seen them, he closed his eyes for fear of seeing them again. Then when the wagon came up the opposite place where they were standing, the venerable old man rose from his high seat and standing up called in a loud voice, "I am the sage Leargandeo." Then the wagon passed on without another word. Behind it came another of the same kind with another old man on a throne, who made the wagon stop and in a voice said voice no less solemn than the first cried, I am the sage Alkeep, close friend of Urganda the Unknown. He passed on, and immediately yet another wagon of the same kind appeared, though the man seated on the evil throne was not old like the others, but a very stout fellow of an evil appearance, who, on coming up, arose like the others and proclaimed in harsher and more devilish tones, I am Archelaus the enchanter, the mortal enemy of Amadis of Gaul, and all his kin, and passed on. The three wagons halted a little way off, and the deafening din of the wheels ceased. After that, there was no further noise but the sound of soft and harmonious music, which delighted Sancho, who took it for a good omen, and said to the Duchess, from whom he had not stirred by so much as an inch, Lady, where there's music, there can be no mischief. Nor where there are lights and brightness, replied the Duchess, to which Sancho answered, Flame may give light, and bonfires brightness, as we can see, but they may very well scorch us. But music is always a sign of feasting and merriment. That remains to be seen, said Don Quixote, who was listening, and he was right, as the following chapter will show.
Question. This is all an act from the Duke and Duchess? Is that right? It's a trick? Because it said early on about the sound that even those who were in on the secret still thought it was pretty scary. The sound was scary. In fact, even those who were in the secret were seized with alarm. Okay, we've got 10 minutes. Continue, please, if you would. And who are these guys? I've never heard of these guys. Lirgan Deo. Deo means God. Lirgan.
Chapter 35, a continuation of Don Quixote's instructions for the disenchantment of Dulcinea and other wonderful things. In time to the delightful music, they saw a triumphal car approaching, drawn by 6 gray mules and covered in white linen, and on each beast rode a penitent, also dressed in white, with a great lighted wax torch in his hand. The wagon was twice or even 3 times bigger than the previous ones. On the front of it and at the side were 12 other penitents, white as snow, all with their torches alight, a sight both marvelous and terrifying. On a raised throne was seated a nymph, swathed in countless veils of gold tissue, which made her appear, if not richly, at least gorgeously apparelled. Her face was covered with a delicate and transparent veil in such a way that its folds did not prevent them from making the features of a lovely maiden, and the multitude of lights made it possible to distinguish her beauty and her youth, for she seemed to be neither more than 20 nor less than 17. Beside her came a figure swathed to the feet in a trailing robe which brushed the ground, with his head covered by a black veil. At the moment when the wagon arrived opposite the Duke and Duchess and Don Quixote, the music of the oboes ceased, and soon the harps and lutes which were being played. Oboes ceased, and soon the harps and lutes which were being played in the wagon ceased also. Then, rising to his feet, the figure in the robe threw its folds aside, and stripping the veil from his face, revealed plainly the very shape of death, fleshless and hideous, which caused Don Quixote some disturbance and Sancho some alarm, while the Duke and Duchess assumed an appearance of fear. This living death rose upon his feet and began to speak in a drowsy voice and with a sleepy articulation after this manner. I, Merlin, am who, as the histories say, had for my father even the devil himself, alive by lapse of time now authorized, prince of the magic art, repository and monarch of the Zoroastrian science. Jealous I am of ages and of times, which seek to cloak the exploits of the brave knights errant, whom I loved in ancient days and still do love with deep affection. Although the nature of enchanters and those that are wizards and magicians is perpetually hard and harsh and stern, yet mine is tender, soft, and amorous, loving to do good deeds to one and all. Into the murky caverns of blackness, where my soul was fast occupied in drawing certain rhomboids and mystic characters, there came the piteous voice of that fair maiden, the peerless Dulcinea del Toboso. I learned of her enchantment and mischance and transformation from a high-born lady into a rustic village wench. I grieved and caged my spirit in the hollow shell of this most dreadful and fierce skeleton. But after searching through 10,000 books of this, my devilish and my vile craft, I come to bring the fitting remedy to such grief and to so great an ill. O you, glory and pride of all who wear the coat of steel and hardest adamant, O light, O lantern, path, pole, star, and guide of those who, casting off their sluggish sleep and feather beds, make themselves strong to endure the intolerable use and exercise of sanguinary and laborious arms. To you I say, great hero never perished enough, yet never praised enough, yet ever praised. Most valiant and at the same time most wise Don Quixote, La Mancha's splendor and the star of Spain. that to restore into her pristine state the peerless Dulcinea del Toboso, needful it is that your squire Sancho Panza shall deal himself 3,300 lashes upon his two most ample buttocks, both to the air exposed in such sort that they shall smart and sting and vex him sorely. This is the universal resolution of all the authors of her sad misfortunes, and therefore, lords and ladies, have I come. My goodness, exclaimed Sancho, 3,000 lashes? But I'd as soon give myself 3 stabs as 3 lashes. The devil take this way of disenchanting. I don't see why my buttocks have got to do with these enchantments. By God, if Master Merlin doesn't find another way of disenchanting the lady Dulcinea del Toboso, she may go enchanted to her grave. I will take you, said Don Quixote, don yokel stuffed with garlic, and I will bind you to a tree naked as your mother bore you, and not only will I give you 3,300, but 6,100 lashes. 600 lashes, so well laid on that it won't take more than 3,300 tugs to pull them off. Do not answer me a word, or I will tear your soul out. But on hearing this, Merlin observed, it must not be done that way. The lashes the good Sancho is to get must not be applied by force, but must be of his own free will, and at such time as he pleases, for there is no date fixed. But it is permitted him, if he wishes to cut this thing down by half, to receive it at the hand of another, though it must be a fairly weighty hand. At no one else's, nor at my own, nor shall it be a weighty one, nor one that can be weighed, replied Sancho. No hand whatever shall touch me. Was it I that bore the lady Dulcinea del Toboso, that my buttocks shall pay for the sins of her eyes? My master now, he's a part of her. For every moment he's calling her his life and his soul, his support and his prop. He can whip himself for her, and he should, and do all that's needful for her disenchantment. But me whip myself, I renounce. Scarcely had Sancho finished speaking when the silvery nymph who rode beside Merlin rose to her feet, and flinging the thin veil from her face, revealed a countenance which seemed to all excessively lovely. Then, with a masculine assurance, and in no very ladylike tones, she addressed Sancho Panza directly. O wretched squire, with no more soul than a pitcher, with a heart of cork and bowels of flint and pebble, if you were commanded, shameless thief, to cast yourself to the ground off a huge tower if they bade you, enemy of the human race, to eat a dozen toads, 2 dozen lizards, and 3 dozen snakes, if they entreated you to kill your wife and children with the fiercest sharp scimitar, it would be no wonder were you to appear squeamish and reluctant. But to make a to-do about 3,300 lashes, when the most wretched charity scholar gets as many every month, that amazes, astonishes, and affrights the compassionate bowels of all who hear it, and of everyone too who may come, in the course of time, to hear of it. Cast, you miserable, hard-hearted animal, cast, I say, those startled owls out of your eyes. Owl's eyes of yours upon these pupils of mine, which have been compared to glittering stars, and see them weep thread by thread and skein by skein, making furrows, tracks, and channels down the fair fields of my cheeks. Let it move you, knavish and malevolent monster, that my blooming youth, for I'm still in my teens, I'm 19 and not yet 20, is being consumed and withered beneath the skin of a rustic peasant girl, and I do not look like one now. This is a particular favor that the Lord Merlin here present has done me, solely in order that my features may soften you, that my tears of a distressed beauty may turn rocks into cotton, and tigers into sheep. Lash that thick hide of yours, you great untamed beast. Raise up from sloth that spirit which inclines you to eating, and still more eating, and set at liberty the smoothness of my skin, the meekness of my temper, and the beauty of my countenance. But if you will not relent for me, or submit to any reasonable terms, to do so for the sake of that poor knight there at your side. For your master, I say, whose soul I can now see stuck in his throat, not 10 inches from his lips, only awaiting your answer, harsh or kind, to issue through his mouth or return to his breast. On hearing this, Don Quixote fell his throat and said, turning to the Duke, By God, sir, Dulcinea has spoken the truth, for here's the soul sticking in my throat like the nut of a crossbow. What do you say to that, Sancho? Asked the Duchess. I say, lady, replied Sancho, that is for the lashes, I renounce them. Renounce, you should say, Sancho, and not what you said, observed the Duke. Let me alone, your highness. I'm in no state now to look into subtleties or to consider a letter or two more or less. For these lashes I'm to get or I'm to give myself have so upset me that I don't know what I'm saying or doing. But I should like to hear from my lady Doña Dulcinea del Toboso, where she learnt her way of begging. She comes to ask me to tear my flesh open with lashes and calls the pitcher soul and great untamed beast and a string of other bad names. May the devil bear them. Is my flesh my chance brass, and does it matter to me whether she's disenchanted or not? What hamper of fine linen skirts, kerchiefs, and socks, though I don't wear them, does she bring with her to soften me? None, but just one piece of abuse on top of another. Though she knows the local proverb that an ass loaded with gold goes lightly up a mountain, and that gifts break rocks, and praying God and wielding the hammer, and a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. That my lord and master, who should be stroking my neck and wheedling me to make myself soft as wool or carded cotton, says that if he catches me, he'll bind me naked to a tree and double the dose of lashes. These compassionate gentlemen should consider that they're not just asking the squire to whip himself, but a governor, which is, as you might say, gilding the lily. Let them learn that devil take them how to ask and how to beg and how to show their breeding. For all times are not the same, and men are not always in a good humor. Now I'm ready to burst with grief because of the tear in my green coat, and they come and ask me to whip myself of my own free will, which I'd as soon do as turn red Indian. Then truly, friend Sancho, said the Duke, if you do not.
What does Dulcinea represent? The whole time, what does she represent?
Good. No. Like the final goal thing. I think she represents something good.
Of course, she represents something good. Virtue.
Oh.
Virtue, 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 virtue. If you want to get to her, what must you do?
Suffer.
Submit your flesh. Now, Sancho is where Don Quixote was when he went into the mountains and particularly stripped himself down and scourged himself. Remember that? And everyone's like, he's crazy, he's crazy, he's crazy. The dark night of the senses, the dark night of the soul. He's in the dark night of the senses. You have to be willing to let go of all things material in order to get to virtue, in order to get to goodness, in order to get to something higher. That's how I see it. Please continue. Can I do it? You go.
Then truly, friend Sancho, said the Duke, if you do not get yourself softer than a ripe fig, you shall not set a hand in the government.
Oh,
it would be a fine thing if I were to send my alman a cruel governor with bowels of flint, who would not bow to the tears of distressed maidens, nor to the petitions of wise, haughty, and ancient enchanters and sages. To be brief, Sancho, either you shall be whipped, or you shall whip yourself, or you shall not be governor. Sir, answered Sancho, won't they give me 2 days to consider what is best for me? No, on no account, said Merlin. Here at this instant and on this spot the issue of this business must be settled. Either Dulcinea shall return to the cave of Montesinos and to her former state of peasant girl, or she shall be carried in her present shape to the Elysian fields, where she will wait till the number of lashes is complete. Come, good Sancho, said the Duchess, be of good heart, and show your gratitude to Don Quixote for his bread that you have eaten, for we are all bound to serve him and to please him for his worthy character and his high chivalry. Accept this lashing, my son, and let the devil go to the devil and fear to the faint-hearted, for a good heart breaks bad luck, as you well know. To this advice Sancho replied by addressing Merlin with an inquiry well off the point. Tell me, your worship, Sir Merlin, when the courier devil came here, he gave my master a message from Sir Montesinos, bidding him wait for him here, since he was going to give him instructions for the disenchantment of the Lady Doña Dulcinea del Toboso. Yet so far we haven't seen Montesinos or anyone like him. To which Merlin replied, the devil, friend Sancho, is an ass and a very great scamp. I sent him to seek your master with a message not from Montesinos, but from me. For Montesinos is in his cave awaiting his disenchantment, or rather hoping for it, for there is still the tail to skin. If he owes you anything, or you have any business to do with him, I will bring him to you, and put him wherever you like. But now make up your mind to accept this penance, and believe me, it will be of great advantage to you, both to your soul and to your body, to your soul because of the charity with which you do it, and to your body because you are of a sanguine temperament, I know, and it can do no harm to lose a little blood. Many doctors there are in the world, even enchanters are doctors, replied Sancho. But since they all tell me so, though I don't see it myself, I agree to give myself the 3,300 lashes, on condition that I can do it whenever I choose, without any fixing of times and seasons. I'll try to wipe off the debt as soon as possible, so that the world may enjoy the beauty of the Lady Doña Dulcinea del Toboso. For it appears that she's really beautiful, though I never thought she was. But there must be one other condition, that I shan't be obliged to draw blood with this whipping, and if any of the lashes are only fly teasers, they must be reckoned in. Also, if I make a mistake in the number, Sir Merlin, since he knows everything, shall take care to keep count, and advise me of the number too many or too few. There will be no need to advise you of any too many, answered Merlin, for that Lady Dulcinea will be disenchanted at the very moment when you reach the exact number, and will come in gratitude to look for the good Sancho, to give him thanks and a reward too for his good deed. For there is no need to be scrupulous about a few lashes too many or too few, and heaven forbid that I should deceive anyone, even so much as a hair's breadth. Well then, in God's hands be it, said Sancho. I accept my bad luck. I say that I agree to the penance with the conditions noted. No sooner had Sancho pronounced these last words than the music of the oboes struck up once more, and the great number of muskets were fired. Don Quixote hung on Sancho's neck, giving him countless kisses on his forehead and his cheeks. The Duchess and the Duke and all the spectators showed signs of the greatest satisfaction, and the wagon began to move on. As the fair Dulcinea passed them, she bowed her head to the Duke and Duchess, and made a deep curtsy to Sancho. And now the gay and smiling dawn came on apace. The little flowers of the field raised their heads and stood erect, and the liquid crystals of the brooks, murmuring over the white and gray pebbles, went to pay tribute to the expectant rivers. The merry earth, the clear sky, the pure air, the serene light, each and all together gave manifest signs that the day, which came treading on the skirts of the dawn, would be calm and bright. Delighted with the chase and at the skill and success of their plans, the Duke and Duchess returned to their castle with the intention of following up their jokes, for nothing promised them greater pleasure.
So it's a joke then?
Yeah.
If you want the government of your own isle, you must sacrifice. Is that a joke? No. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. God bless you.
Thank you.
So no homework
No
or,
homework.
okay.
Thank you.
Got where I wanted to be.